Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be presenting at Internet Librarian Connect 2021. In today's presentation, we'll be discussing AV collections, community partnerships, and platform development. My name is Katie Gambone. I'm the Senior Product Sales Manager for the Quartex platform at Adam Matthew Digital. Today, I'm very pleased to be joined by Alex Cherian. Alex is the archivist at the Bay Area TV Archive at San Francisco State University. Before we begin, just a brief overview of what we'll be discussing. First, I'll introduce Adam Matthew Digital so everyone has an idea of what we do and why we are interested in AV content. We'll then hear a bit about the AV pilot project. We'll take a look at the platform's current AV capabilities, and then Alex and I will chat about the Bay Area TV Archive and take a look at some of his work with transcriptions as just one outcome of the pilot project. We'll also talk about the other features the AV pilot project will be discussing over the next year. And then finally, we'll open it up for question and answer at the end. Adam Matthew Digital is a publisher of primary resource collections, and we've listed a few statistics here that we thought might interest you. We've been licensing archival content for over 30 years now and have been publishing materials as digital collections online for about 20 years. We are proud to work with many of the world's leading libraries, archives, and research institutions to make their materials available online to the scholarly community. We have over 120 digital collections with new frontlist content being added each year. We have a global audience with over 1,100 customers in 44 countries, plus just over 20 additional partners using Quartex for their digital collections in 4 different countries. So what is Quartex? I mentioned Adam Matthew Digital began publishing content digitally about 20 years ago. We've always built our own platform using in-house technology. Quartex is the first time in which we are offering our own tech for use by individual repositories. AV collections are growing in importance as a critical primary resource for today's researchers. They also represent a number of unique challenges, some of which you see listed here. In Quartex, AV functionality was initially developed and implemented to support Adam Matthew Digital's unique video collections. Oral histories, primary source film footage, audio recordings, video essays with academics, and more can be found in over 30 of Adam Matthew Digital databases. With more clients exploring Quartex to support a significant amount of AV assets similar to Adam Matthew's collections, but of varying quality, Adam Matthew Digital's engineers determined that while the needs of Adam Matthew overlap with the needs of our customers in most cases, Quartex customers have more varied needs and require additional functionality for supporting these collections. To best meet the needs of our entire client base, we launched the AV pilot partnership to further enhance Quartex platform capabilities to support large and diverse AV collections. The AV pilot partnership is a 2-year engagement. 3 dedicated partners currently participate in the program, including the Bay Area TV Archive, who's joined me today, the University of Florida, and Towson University. Each partner has agreed to contribute 200 to 300 hours of AV content, and upon ingest into the system, they've agreed to transcribe all of their assets. Finally, each partner must provide feedback to our Quartex engineers on AV pilot project priorities. We'll talk a bit more about those priorities in just a few minutes. In addition to our 3 dedicated AV pilot partners that I mentioned above, we also seek feedback from existing clients such as Syracuse University, Baylor University, and others with AV collections. We also actively seek feedback from prospective clients. Feedback for the AV pilot project is taken in the form of individual interviews and larger group interviews to discuss specific needs. As we are conceptualizing functionality, we discuss specific use cases and we review conceptualization documents. As features are closer to release, we also share wireframes to capture last-minute feedback. Before we talk about the priorities of our AV pilot partnership, I thought I would orient everyone quickly to the AV capabilities currently available in Quartex. For this, we'll jump into a live demo. For our whistle-stop tour of AV functionality available in the Quartex platform, we're going to start here on the Bay Area TV Archive site. I'm going to start by running a quick search for the term Viet Cong. And you'll see we come to a list of 7 different assets in the platform in which the term Viet Cong was found. Whenever you run transcription in Quartex, the transcript is automatically indexed against that asset, enabling full text search. If we were to search for the same keywords, Viet Cong, but disable our transcript as part of our search and only search on the metadata, you'll see that we actually wouldn't have identified any of the 7 assets in the Bay Area TV Archive collection. And the reason why is because the term Viet Cong was only found in the transcripts. We're going to go ahead and look at this first asset here, Robert Kennedy at the San Francisco Commonwealth Club. To orient you to what AV assets look like in the Quartex platform, from the top, here's the title of our asset, and below that are the 2 different collections this particular asset has been tagged to. So this asset has been tagged to the Robert F. Kennedy collection as well as the KRON collection. Any words within the system that are encircled in a gray ellipse are essentially a controlled vocabulary term. Clicking on the word in the ellipse will take you to a filtered list of all assets in the system that have been tagged to that same controlled vocabulary term. Just below our title and collections name, we have our video player in the center. To the right, we have a summary metadata tab. Summary metadata is completely customizable here in the Quartex platform. And then to the right of that, we have our transcript tab. Because we've run AV transcription in platform, what's produced is a time-coded copy of the transcript. And these time codes are hyperlinks, which will take us directly to that section of the video. I'm going to scroll down and you'll see that any place where our keywords have been found, which you see here, it's highlighted in yellow. I'm going to click on this hyperlink and go directly to that section of the video. I've muted the player, but you can see that using this button here, I've been able to pull in the transcript as closed captioning into my video player. That means that visitors to my site can change their viewing experience to this, or even full screen, and still have the benefit of the transcript available to them through closed captioning. Just below my video player, I have a download button. This is configurable on the administrative side of the platform. From the Bay Area TV Archive is allowing us to download a copy of the transcript and/or a copy of the document metadata. To the right of that, there's a bookmark document button. This allows a researcher to save this asset to a feature we call My Account, which is found here with a little person icon, where I can save resources that are important for my research. Below that, we have our full metadata record, which has been named document details in this particular case. All metadata in Quartex is completely customizable. So this is how Bay Area TV Archive has chose to set this up. And then below that, we have a search results tab because we've run a keyword search here in the platform. Our search results tab will tell us how many times our keyword search has been found. And in this case, we can see it's been found 2 different times in this particular transcript. For another example, we're going to hop over to the Sonoma County Library digital collection site, and we're going to take a look at some of their oral histories and stories. Sonoma has provided this asset and they had transcripts available. They have a very diverse community and choose to provide access to transcripts in both English and Spanish. And so when I click play, you'll see that I have it muted. The speaker is actually speaking in English, but the closed captioning is providing a translated version of the transcript through the player. If I go below, you'll see the full metadata record in this case has been labeled item details, and it's a very thorough record based on Sonoma County Library cataloging preferences. I wanted to point out this transcript or full text field, which they've set up, in this field, they've actually provided an English language version of the transcript. And you'll notice that just below that, a Spanish language version of the transcript is also available. This could have been set up as two separate metadata fields if they had wished. But again, this is based on your standards and practices. As an alternate option, they could have also set up a transcript tab to the right here and provided access to both the English language and Spanish language versions of the transcript here alongside the player. Quartex also supports complex compound objects. And for this example, we're here on the Baylor University Quartex site. We're going to take a look at a resource from the Black Gospel Music Restoration Project. Here we are at our example. So a complex compound objects means that the asset is comprised of both image-based files, which we see here. The first four are image-based files, the disk, as well as the jacket for this particular asset. And then below that, we have the audio files from this particular record. This is also easily navigable to from the Contents tab. You can see that they've listed out the image-based files for the disk and jacket, and then they've also used the Contents tab to name the actual tracks on this record so that they're easily navigable to from the Contents tab. Quartex also allows you to feature AV in digital exhibits. So for this example, we are on the Quartex demo site. I'm going to scroll down to our digital exhibits. Here we are in our digital exhibit. This actually features image-based files, which you can see as I hover over the numbers. The last file is, of course, an oral history, and it's currently playing. And you can see that our transcript for this asset has pulled into the digital exhibit in the form of closed captioning. If we wanted to see this full record, we could actually use this related page link to go directly to this asset in our system, which we see here. From here, I just wanted to illustrate that administrators can also configure an embed button, which would allow visitors to this site to take a current copy of the document, summary metadata, and transcripts, and place this on another platform. Video can be embedded in Quartex in other ways as well. Here we are on the Des Plaines Memory site, and under their What's New button, this Videos tab, we're going to go right there. And you'll see that they've used our iframe content block to pull in video assets, which are not necessarily assets related to research in their collections, but they're videos that they really want their community to be able to access and use quite easily. So this is another way you can feature video in the Quartex platform. Now let's talk a little bit about the AV pilot project and hear from Alex about the work he's doing. To date, AV pilot partners have provided critical feedback on the conceptualization and wireframes for the list you see here. Alex from the Bay Area TV Archive has been particularly helpful on the ability to edit transcript output. So let's talk about that with him now. Hi, Alex, how are you?
Hey, Katie, I'm good. I'm here in San Francisco at the Bay Area TV Archive. You can see all of the equipment behind me. This is where the magic happens.
That's fantastic. Well, I'm so glad that you joined me today for this conversation about the Bay Area TV Archive collections. I'm located here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, so it's good to be together virtually. So to start off our conversation, can you tell us a little bit about the Bay Area TV Archive and just how your collections came to be?
Yes, so in 1981, senior broadcasters at some of the local TV affiliates noticed to their horror that custodians were throwing out film material. This turned out to be the legacy of everything they'd shot in the 60s and the 1970s. And the material in some cases was rescued from skips and it made its way to San Francisco State University, where the Department of Special Collections recognized its importance and started to preserve it. Fast forward to 2021, so we're talking 40 years, and we make over 300 hours of material available to view online for free. And that's testament to their foresight and also to their legacy itself.
Great. So what are the types of materials you support specifically?
Over 95% of our material is 16mm news and documentary film. So this is typically material not that was shot in the studio. So we don't have anchors rustling papers and saying, let's go over to sports. What we have are people shooting material on site in locations in San Francisco and Northern California. Quite often, this is the material that didn't make it to air, or they could only show a few seconds of it. So when people see material on our website, they're quite often seeing footage that was never seen even back in the day. So it's a first-time experience. It really is primary source material. Much of the focus of what we work on relates to issues surrounding social justice. And because it was San Francisco in the 1960s and 70s, there were a lot of social movements and revolutionary organizations in the Bay Area at the time, such as the Black Panther Party. So our stakeholders are typically happy with what we're doing. In terms of who uses the material, our material is used by filmmakers, by students, by researchers, by museums, pretty much anyone who has a vested interest in finding out about their history, or even people who want to see their parents or their grandparents fighting for the rights that they enjoy today.
That's amazing. It sounds like it's a very busy, but also living archive that's really getting a lot of use, which is fantastic to hear. So, before you started with Quartex, I imagine you were sharing these materials in other ways. Can you tell us a little bit about the platform you're currently using for sharing these collections with your community?
Yes. In 2009, our Department of Academic Technology came up with an in-house platform. But one of the issues that we were running into more recently is one of the external vendors that we work with to provide access to transcripts and closed captions, we simply couldn't afford the services. And they were problematic in that we weren't able to make changes relatively simply. And that's when we reached out to Quartex.
Yeah, and we are so happy to be working with you now since last year. So any reflections on you mentioned the transcripts being something that's very important to you. Any other reasons you can tell us about why you chose to participate in the AV pilot project?
Yes, Quartex wasn't just offering us ready to go package or product. They were offering to work with us and give us a stake, if you will, in helping to produce new platform functions, such as the edit AV transcripts capability. And the idea of being involved in the process and giving our input to what we would like as an archive, it was really attractive because we could have a say in how things potentially would work. That isn't something that I came across when we were looking for an alternative vendor.
Well, and I will say, as the vendor, we really were excited about the opportunity of working with repositories who were living and breathing this work every day, because you have the best sense of how your community needs to use these collections. And also the workflows that are important to you. So we want to make sure that the product's developed in a way that really does make sense for you and the people who use your collection. So that help has been invaluable. So with that in mind, can you give us an example of how you are using the Quartex platform and the new functionality that's being developed to work with your community?
As far as giving you concrete examples of what we've been doing with Quartex, I have some pre-recorded video that I would like to share with folks here. The first video we're going to look at features the baseball legend Willie Mays, who was having trouble buying a home in San Francisco in 1957. This is going to offer a relatively simple example of how Quartex's edit AV transcript function works. Then we're going to move on to a much more complex example featuring Dr. Maya Angelou and her 1968 TV series Blacks, Blues, Black, which will involve a translation of a song that she was singing in the West African Yoruba language.
Let's review the first pass made by Quartex's auto-transcript service on a 1957 news report featuring Willie Mays, who faced housing segregation in San Francisco.
I understand you started looking for a home, is that correct?
Yes, Ms. Herbert and his wife picked me up at the airport, and then I went by to look at the place that my wife had picked out for me to live on, I guess on Manor Drive, I guess.
I understand. Did you make a deposit on the house?
Here in the back end of Quartex, I can play the clip to review the audio and then edit the transcripts manually. The first thing I noticed was the captions begin 8 seconds too early while our intro sequence is playing. So I'll update the timecode itself to correct the timing. Then I just make the textual edits and save my changes. As a matter of interest, maybe you've noticed the video playback quality is lower in the back end of Quartex. This is because in the front end, users can switch between low, medium and high playback quality.
Herbert and his wife picked me up at the airport, and then I went by to look at the place that my wife, Herbert and his wife picked me up at the airport.
I understand you started looking for a home, is that correct?
Yes, Ms. Herbert and his wife picked me up at the airport. And then I went by to look at the place that my wife had picked out for me to live on.
Having saved these edits in the back end, I promote the updated transcript files and then review them in the front end.
I understand you started looking for a home, is that correct?
Yes, Ms. Herbert and his wife picked me up at the airport, and then I went by to look at the place that my wife had picked out for me to live on, I guess on Manor Drive, I guess.
I understand. Did you make a deposit on the house?
I neglected to change went back to went by and picked hour to picked out. So I'll need to repeat the process again. It's easy to make these errors, but with a manual edit option, they're simple to fix. A PBS TV series from 1968 that Dr. Maya Angelou made about black history called Blacks, Blues, Black required a more complex use of transcription editing. When we re-released this series in 2015, each episode opened and closed with the same song, sung by Dr. Angelou. We decided to produce a translation for this song, but with zero paperwork, didn't even know which language was being used. We consulted with the University of Ghana, the University of Cape Town, and UC Berkeley's Center for African Studies to establish that Dr. Angelou was singing in the Yoruba language of West Africa. Tamidi's Global Services provided a transcription and translation of this song, which was a lament about slavery. Then we began to look at different ways to share this information online, using Quartex. The initial automated transcript generated by AWS Transcribe made no sense of the Yoruba lyrics, as we can see here. In the back end of Quartex again, it's relatively simple to update the text and timecodes. For on-screen captioning, we used an English translation from Yoruba. Then we just edit and check the changes in the front end. We also set up a free text metadata field in the relevant record, limiting this to English text as formatting isn't possible with this field type. Another option was to create a related asset in the form of a translation document, accessible as a PDF file. This provided users with access to both the Yoruba transcription and an English translation. Finally, we also created a compound asset by placing our video file into a folder with a JPEG image file of the translation. Collaborating on this project showed us how Quartex offers multiple approaches to the curation of video assets on their platform. And this flexibility helped us to showcase Dr. Angelau's work in Blacks, Blues, Black.
What is Africa to me? Join me next week, and we'll continue to talk about Africa and Black Americans. Thank you.
In addition to the AV pilot project developments Alex and I just discussed, there are a number of other features we plan to discuss with the group over the next several months. These include bulk export of transcripts, crowdsource editability of transcripts, ingesting existing transcripts, YCAG compliance, audio description, clip creation, security, and more. If you're interested in learning more about the Bay Area TV Archive and their collections, I would encourage you to visit their website and connect with Alex directly. I'd also invite anyone who is interested in learning more about Quartex or the AV pilot project to visit myself and my colleague Jessica Kowalski at the Quartex booth here at the conference. We hope that the information we shared with you today is helpful. Alex and I will now open the floor for live question and answer. Thank you.